Everyone, Kristen David with Upleveling Your Business. I am here with Elvin Dowling, who is amazing and someone that I used to work with. And I am so excited because he too has launched his book this month. And so wanted to jump on. We're going to talk about his book, Still Invisible, talk about the amazing things that have been happening already in this first week. So many cool things. So Elvin, tell us about your new book. Like, you just launched it this week.
I did. Well, first of all, Kristen, thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. And I have got to say that I am just peacock proud and hyena happy to be launching this new book. And so I have a new book out, as you mentioned before. It's called Still Invisible, Examining America's Black Male Crisis. And it's been out about 10 days now. And for the last 9 days, it has skyrocketed to the #1 new release in its category on Amazon. It's a bestseller in a couple of categories on Amazon. And so I'm really excited about what's going on with the book right now.
That's awesome. Awesome. So start us off with the week. You had a big Monday right off the bat.
I did. It's often been said that success is when preparation meets opportunity. And so I had some serious opportunities this week. I started out my week in the radio station. And so I've had the opportunity to be interviewed in 2 local radio stations here in South Florida. One is X102.3 in an interview that's going to be released on Sunday. But yesterday I had the opportunity to hang out with a couple of radio personalities at Hot 105 radio station here in South Florida. So I'm very excited about that. And this week I was also featured in the South Florida Times newspaper. A
Nice.
huge section on the front page. So I'm really excited about it. I mean, this thing is taking off in leaps and bounds, and I'm happy to be a part of the number.
Well, that's incredible. I know you have spent a lot of time getting this book put together. It's been one of these things that you've wanted to get to. So for those of that in the audience that don't know, the book is called Still Invisible. And I've already started reading it. It's a bit bigger than I'm used to. It's got substance. How about that? And but share why this book? What prompted you to want to sit down and write this book?
Well, thank you for that question. Kristen, I spent a large part of my life working on behalf of the poor, the marginalized, the voiceless. As you know, I served as chief of staff to one of the country's largest civil rights organizations, the National Urban League. And it was actually, I was inspired by recent events, in terms of when you turn on TV and you see the challenges that African American males are facing. But for me, it was a bit more personal. And by that, I mean, I got tired of feeling as if I were invisible. Now, I'm a guy who's had a pretty extraordinary life, right? I've had the opportunity to work on Wall Street, to be a guest at the White House on multiple occasions. But when I walk outside and I don't have on a 3-piece suit, I may have on a jogging suit or something, it almost seems and felt as if I were invisible. And I kept thinking to myself, well, if I feel that way, then surely my cousin Junebug might feel that way too, right? That really inspired me to do some research. I started about 5 years ago. And I said, well, I'm going to quick book. And 550 pages later, years later, the book is finally complete. It took me about 9 months of actual writing every 6 days a week. But there's nothing to be said about being done. And, as an artist, because I honestly consider myself on some levels an artist, as an artist, you're really quite satisfied with your work. You're always wondering how people are going to perceive it. Is it going to be received well? And so I struggle. In fact, I still struggle with that as a writer. But I have discovered that done beats perfect. And so although In my estimation, it's not perfect where I want it. Yet, and 138,433 words later, I've got a number
Yes.
one piece.
Awesome. And so tell us about that. It hit the #1 list in several categories.
Yeah. So it hit the number one list. It's the number one new release in civil rights. It's been the number
Good.
one new release in Americana classical books on Amazon. It's been a bestseller in African American authors. And to be quite honest with you, Kristen, I was totally shocked. Totally shocked. It was almost like a lightning bolt had come from out of the sky and knocked me down. I received a phone call the day after the book was launched by a
Hmm.
friend of mine, and she says, "Well, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing okay." And she says, "Well, what does it feel like being number one?" And I'm thinking, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Who?
I went to Amazon and I pulled it up, still invisible, Elvin Dowling, and there was a number one new release banner by it. And I literally fell to my knees and cried.
Aw.
And my children, I've got three small kids. I got a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And they ran in and they're wondering, "Dad, what's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, nothing's wrong. Actually, everything is right." And so it real, type of moment, but I'm really fortunate. And I think that there are a number of lessons as a writer to be learned from how do you launch a book, get it out into the public domain, and then how do you
Yes.
shoot it up uh, to a number one new release or a bestseller. It's not
Yeah.
easy, but it's possible.
No, it's not easy. Actually, that was the topic of my blog last week. Was seriously on tips of how to do an ebook launch and kind of help promote your book because there's a lot of different moving parts, right? I mean, I just published my book the week before you, so 2 weeks ago, and it just sky launched, but it took a lot of behind the scenes work. And it was amazing to me that it's not more prevalent knowledge. Like people don't necessarily have it shared out there. And so I thought, well, hell, I'm gonna take everything I learned and go share it with everyone because
Yeah.
that's my mantra of always helping move people forward. So yeah, I'll throw in the chat the link to the blog. But I agree. I mean, doing a book it's an adventure of its own writing it. And then when you go to launch it, it's like this whole new story.
If I could just piggyback off of that for a moment and talk about my process
Yeah.
of writing and then the launching, uh, you know, in writing this book, it was almost like putting together puzzle pieces. I would get bursts of inspiration and I'd write something down and I realized that it didn't quite fit over here and I would save it to put in other places. But I've got to tell you, this is actually my second book. And so my first book I released back in 2010. Wow, it's been that long. And a lot of things. The first thing I learned was to not sign a bad public deal. And one of the challenges that we have as writers is that publishers who do enormous work, they do great work, but they're going to take the lion's share of your profits. And so one of the first thing I did was decided that I didn't want to sign a deal in which all of the intellectual property that I created was going to profit someone else primarily and not
Yeah.
profit me. And so that was step number one. But I think that I realized when I put my book together, it was like 27 or 28 different parts that
Yeah.
came into the book. You have the preface and the postface, the foreword and the afterword. Then you got the chapters, you got the cover you got to design, the front back cover. Then you talk about endorsements. Who do you know that other people know that would be willing to put their name and a quote to the book? And so there are
Yeah.
all these different moving parts, and you've got to start pulling them all together in order to be successful. If I could talk just for a moment about the
Yeah.
foreword, and
Yes,
so,
I was going to ask you about that.
well, thank you.
There's
My
some great stuff in there.
My mentor is a gentleman by the name of Alcee Hastings. And Alcee is a congressman from the 20th District of Florida. He is actually the dean of the Florida delegation. He's been serving in Congress almost 30 years now. And I worked for him as an intern on two occasions back in 1994 and 1995. And we developed a really special relationship. He became, in many ways, like a father to me. He came to my wedding, and he's, we have a flag here in our home that was flown over the Capitol in honor of our wedding.
Aw.
Great friend. And so I approached him about writing this book, or writing the foreword. Now, the interesting thing about Congressman Hastings is he actually is suffering right now from pancreatic cancer, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So one of the inspirations for finishing this work was the fact that I wanted to honor him as well. But one of the great things about his foreword, which is entitled Forward Ever, Backwards Never, he talks about the it doesn't really matter where you start off in life. You just got to keep pushing. There are going to be obstacles in your way when you're writing your new book, when you're trying to launch your new book, but you got to keep pushing. There are going to be people who are going to tell you that it's not possible, that your book is a pipe dream, that this is a figment of your imagination. But forward ever, backwards never. And so I use that foreword that he wrote, one as an inspiration to finish the book, but really as an inspiration to keep running the race of life. And what I've got to say is you're absolutely right. You got to keep pushing.
Yeah.
You got to keep moving. And so the book really talks about, and that's really what it's about. It
Yeah.
can be, some may say it's a heavy topic, right? But what I would say is that it is a topic that leads us to solutions. What's next? And how can we improve the lives, not just of African American men, because at the end of the day, our weakest, we as a country are only as strong as our weakest link. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we build each other up, it only strengthens this country. And so I'm really excited about what the book has to offer, and I'm really excited about how we were able to launch it right into
Yeah.
the stratosphere. And if I could just take 30 more seconds and
Yeah.
talk about the experience. And so one of the things I found, Kristen, is that you've got to be willing to go to what I call low-hanging fruit, right? And so when
Okay.
you're launching your ebook or your hardback or your paperback book, you got to start with the people who, as we say in our industry, people who know you, like you,
Like
and
you,
trust you,
trust you.
right? And so that's where I started. I started with people
Yeah.
that knew me and trust me. I picked up the phone. That's,
Mm-hmm.
in sales, it's a huge thing. You got to pick up the phone, ask for the sale. And so I picked up the phone and just called everyone I knew. I looked in
Awesome.
my Rolodex and I just started at A. And I say, okay, Alpha, I'll start with you. And I started at A and I just started dialing and texting, dialing and texting. And the next thing I knew, people were saying, hey, I bought your book. Hey, I went online. Hey, I'm on Amazon now, looking up Still Invisible.
Yeah.
And it started climbing up the charts. And
Yeah.
that's how number one.
Awesome. That's excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. No, I bought the book too. I'm underway with it, but I've got to tell you, one of my favorite parts of the book is honestly the chapter titles. Like every single one of these chapter titles are so unique, and they're like that hook that draws you in. And I want to jump ahead and read some of the later books, chapters 13 and 14 and 15, and I'm like, no, Kristen, you'll get there. You'll get there. But one of them that kind of grabbed my attention was chapter 6. Can you help a brother out? Talk about that one, because that was, I found very interesting and captivating from a different news perspective that I frankly hadn't realized. And so share about that.
So, as you mentioned, each chapter has a very interesting and provocative title. And one of the things that I endeavored to do was to not draw any conclusions in this book. And so, in the beginning of the work, in my author's note, I say that I don't want to draw any conclusions about, I ask questions. The question, are
Yeah.
African American men still invisible in American society? And so, every chapter is a question. And so, the question, can you help a brother out, is really about African American unemployment in the United States. And so what I did was I interviewed a human resources representative who had been in HR for 20 years and asked him, what are some of the challenges that African American men face in the employment system? And what we found is that, unfortunately, it really doesn't matter if you have a degree. You can have really more degrees than a thermometer. The challenge is, chances are you're probably going to be the last hired, first fired. And so that chapter is really about how do we look at the totality of the talent and the experience that these men have and say, I'm really not going to pay any attention to what they look like. I want to know what they can do. And can they
Yeah.
help move my business forward? Can
Yeah.
they help grow my firm? Can they help me grow my organization? And so that's really what that chapter is about, understanding the fact that it's not easy, even for someone like me. I know the experience of being hired and being fired, and being as talented and smart and sharp as you are. That doesn't negate the fact that you too could be facing the sword of Damocles at any time. And so that's really what that.
Yeah. So one of the things I love about your book is that each chapter like finishes with a section about with the survey results and looking at the facts, looking at some of the numbers. I found myself very drawn to those, just interested in learning because frankly, I am from the West Coast. Maybe it's a little different than in the South and the East and such, but I would read the question and then I would think of my own answer and then I'd look at the responses in the survey and I was stunned, frankly, by some of them. I was just because I guess I just don't think that way. But clearly a majority of the United States of the survey participants came to some other conclusions.
They
But
did.
it was amazing.
If I could just tell you about that survey. So every chapter starts with an essay from Lady Justice, this mythical character that we see standing in the courthouse with the blinders on. And then it transitions into a interview of sorts with a leading African-American male. I interviewed judges and doctors and physicians and psychotherapists and police officers. But every chapter ends with three very special sections. The first of which is the survey says. And so what I did, I partnered with a well-respected polling organization called Pollfish. And we conducted a poll that I like to say looks like America. And by that, I mean it was 50% male, 50% female, 18% Hispanic, 12% African American, so forth and so on. So it was really a demographic that looked like the country. And I asked them a variety of questions about their issues and their feelings on race and culture in America. To be honest with you, I was probably more shocked than anyone at a number of the results. We found a number of very compelling findings. And people were really quite honest about how they felt. And so that was an eye opener. And then the next section in the chapter is called By the Numbers, where we actually took a look at the facts. Okay, well, we know what the opinions are. We saw the survey and the poll. But what do the facts say when it comes to can you help a brother out, African Americans in unemployment? What are the facts? The facts are, for example, that in the United States of America in 2020, for example, a white male who has been arrested and spent time in prison has a better chance of getting full-term employment than an African American male who has done everything right, gone to college, and never been in trouble. And so those are the facts. And then when you look at the last part of the chapter, I call them prescriptions for progress, and they're really my favorite part, where we say, okay, we know the challenges, we know the stories, we know the opinions, we know the facts, but what can you, Elvin Dowling, what can you, Kristen David, do right to help make things better? And so I'm excited because the book has about 90 different recommendations, 6 recommendations in every chapter on what little old you can do sitting in your home right now to help make the situation better. Because we've all read those books that kind of tell us about the problem. That's fine, but how are we going to solve it? And so that's how we cover that.
I think it's what and I didn't get a chance to share this with you before, but I think it's amazing that you articulated an action plan at the end of each chapter, essentially. And I did the same thing in my book. I mean, my book is, 4 pillars of successful business management, helping business owners go from being miserable to build thriving, profitable businesses. And at the end of every chapter, I have a recap of the chapter and then your action plan with like 4 to 6 things of what you need to go start working on right now. Like, what do you need to do if this is a problem area in your business? And I love that we're both in that community, like that state of mind of let's help people start moving forward. Let's help them with that first step.
I could tell a funny story. I actually, one of the persons that inspired me to do this was a mutual friend of ours who read my first book. And he called me up. He said, I read your book and it was great writing, but it was terrible. And I thought, this is the first time I've ever heard something like that. And he said it was terrible because at the end of the book, you didn't give me, this is what I have to do. And I thought, he's right. I never thought about that. He said, had you just told me these are the steps you need to take right now, then it would have been a perfect book. And so I kept that in mind for my second book. And I said, I don't want to write about just what the problems are, but we got to figure out a way to solve it. And to be honest with you, Kristen, it's good people like you working with you who've taught me that you can't just articulate the problem. What are the next steps? And so I'm happy to hear that you've got that in your book as well.
Oh yeah, but because I think sometimes I've actually gone back and deconstructed. David Nagel recently was commenting on someone's Facebook post about favorite books, and it was The Art of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, and I've read that book 5 or 6 times, and I had like little sticky notes at the end of each chapter with like my 3 takeaways and 2 or 3 action steps out of each, like what did I learn and how can I apply that in my business? And I've done that with a number of books. And so I get a little frustrated with sometimes when I read a great book and I'm like, no, wait, now, okay, what's my action? What do I need to do out of this? Like, don't just let it go away, right?
And if I could just add on to that. So at the very end of the book, I do a postscript where it's what's next. So you read this book. This is great. You liked it. And a great friend of mine, her name is Lethea Owen. She's a famous motivational speaker. And she taught me a very important lesson about when you finish a product, when you finish a book, when you finish a webinar, you have to answer the question, okay, what's next? Because your reader's going to want to know, how do I get more of this? Is there another book? Is there a workshop? Is there a webinar? What's next? And so in my postscript, I offer workshops so if you got a group or an organization, you want to bring me in, here's a workshop for you. If you've got X, Y, and Z and you want me to do it, here's a keynote speech for you. And so I think that it's important as your listeners are out there and they're planning their books, don't forget about what's next, because your reader wants to know, where do we go from here?
Yep. Yeah, I do the same thing with free resources at the end of my book because it's that action. It's like giving people that next thing so they can start taking charge of their life or start taking action or move forward. But especially with your book, I mean, I think people are going to want to share this. This book is going to be cited to for a very long time. I think there's some amazing information in here. And it's just getting it out to audiences, which I hope everybody that's watching this live stream is going to jump out there, grab a copy of the book, but also share it because it's an incredible story. And I'm so glad you spent 5 years putting it together. It's incredible. It's incredible.
If I could just say, Kristen, you hit on something so important. It's the sharing part. And so I think one of the reasons why I've been able to do well on Amazon is I asked my friends, I asked them, hey, you bought the book, that's great. But what I need you to do, I need you to do 2 things. I need you to post it on your social media feed, encourage people to buy it. Then I need you to go back to Amazon and post a review. And so got to engage the people who are in your network, right? And get them to participate, sharing it on social media and writing reviews, because that's really going to help you as an author to launch out into the deep.
Yeah. Um, I'm going to go get your copy now.
Awesome.
I'm going to post that up there again. Have a little fun with the live stream with the little posts and stuff. Yeah, I mean, so I will tell you, I previous to this never. I used to read. I did Goodreads, and I've put some book reviews on for certain things, but I never realized how important it is to authors to get that feedback and get those book reviews until you published a book prior. This is my first one, and so. I've done a little bit of putting reviews for other people, but never like fully realized how important it is to share so that other people know, is this something that's worth my time? Is this worth buying it and watching it on my side table for a month? Like, is this something I want to pick up and start reading right away? And that's the beauty of those reviews, right? We need to sit down and like pay it forward, everyone. Like, if you like a book, pay it forward, do a review, and share so that the next person can do that. That's actually one of the videos on my website is how to give a good online review. More talking about an online review about a business. But I think I'm going to post a new one about how to give a good book review and pay it forward so that other people know this is worth their time to read the book. But so anybody out there that's out there reading a book right now, think about, as you get towards the end of the book, what kind of review can you go on and post and share the nuggets with other people? Like, what great elements are in there and why should they read those books? So I'm glad you talked about that.
Time is the only thing we will never get back. We've got 168 hours in a week, and you're never going to get yesterday back. And so it's important, you're right, particularly if you're an author. It
Yeah,
is so
yeah,
supremely important that you pay it forward, that you
yeah.
write those reviews, because that's what's going to make the difference
Mhm.
between good book, good book sales and great book sales, is
Yeah,
those book reviews and your willingness to take the time so that someone else knows whether or not I should take my time with this as well.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's great. I think it's great. And I'm going to pop both of our books up there. I think I can do all four at once. Yay! Look at
Yeah.
that. um, yeah, so I mean, Elvin, I didn't even know until last week that your book was coming out this week. So it's just by happenstance that we both published in January, but I'm excited because it's great to have someone else that is on that journey. And, the days that I'm like, okay, what's going on? What do I need to do? Get myself motivated to, like you said, reach out to more people, help make sure people are sharing the book. Because you got to kind of get that groundstorm, that momentum going of getting people to hear about the book, read the book. I actually chose, so you've got yours out in hard copy. You've
Mhm.
got like print. You've got it out in ebook format now.
Yes.
Um, I personally chose to do a little different. I am doing the ebook January 15th, the print book March 15th, the Audible book June 15th, and French and Spanish on September 15th.
That's brilliant.
So I opted to break them up because I think there's a certain audience that love the ebooks. There's a certain audience that love the Audibles. I'm excited. I mean, I spend a third of my time in Paris. I'm here right now. So bonjour for all of you that are wanting to come to Paris and come visit me. But getting it translated into other languages, even like sharing that story and getting it out there so more people become aware. And I think with both of our books, there's those learning components that give people that foundation and that better understanding, the better perspective that empowers them for the rest of their life. That's why I've been really enjoying your book, is that I know I'm learning things that I never saw from that perspective, and it will forever give me a different viewpoint on how society is operating and what's going on out there. So I want to thank you for writing the book.
And I just want to encourage your listeners to be mindful that when you get other people to opt in and to start purchasing the book, you never know who's going to see that. I
Yeah.
received email yesterday from medium.com, and they basically said, hey, we've been seeing a lot of activity with your book, and so we've assigned one of our writers to do a review of your book. And so you just never know who's going to see it.
Mhm.
So it's important to just keep getting that word out, talking to your friends, giving them a phone call, sending them a text message, asking them to write those reviews and make
Yeah.
those because people will see it, and your phone will begin to ring, and it's a beautiful.
Yeah, the other thing that has come from this whole journey, I'm sure you've dealt with this probably after you published your first book as well. You get all the well-wishers and all the people, and then you start talking to people about the books they want to write. And there was a quote in the beginning of your book that was something, you might have to correct me on this, but it was something like, if there's a book you want to read that isn't out there, then you need to write it yourself or something. But what's the quote?
Exactly. Toni Morrison, the famous writer, said, if there's a book you want to read and you can't find it, that means you've got to write it. And that's what inspired me to write this book. I kept saying, somebody's got to write a book about this. And I was that somebody.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. Well, listen, I want to thank you for jumping on. I'm just so excited for you. And I know it's been an amazing, like the last 10 days since my book is published. Not even that, it's been like 8, 9 days or so. And it's just such an amazing journey. And I know you especially like hit the ground running this week. I saw all kinds of stuff on Facebook and love the articles, love the radio shows. I suspect you're going to be invited on a whole lot more very quickly, and we'll be seeing a lot more of you. But yeah, glad we could jump on.
And I just want to say that because of the great synergy that you and I have, I hope that there's a what's next for us down the road as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Somewhere down the road, we're going to do something super fun. I know, like right now, one of the big fun things I'm doing is a Paris experience workshop for business owners. It's 5 days in April in Paris. And I got to tell you, like, some of the fun stuff I've got planned each day is like epic. Like it's outside the box from a normal workshop. It is not your just sit in a room all day long at all. But that's the beauty of life. You get to start, like build a life that you love living and bring other people along and help them up level their life and enjoy. And so yes, Elvin, I am positive we will be, doing other things in the future. Don't know what yet, but it will come.
And I am looking forward to you helping me to up-level my business.
Awesome. Most excellent. Okay, well, everyone, we're going to sign off. Get your copies of the books. Again, Still Invisible and Uplevel Your Business, Uplevel Your Life. I put the links in the chat. Hopefully you can see it. If not, I'll pop them in the comments. So get your copies. Tell us what you think. Give us some of those reviews. Show us a little love. And with that, Elvin, thank you so much for joining us. Let's say goodbye to everyone for today.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.